it's cloying because it sticks to everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
You know,
yeah, and I love I can tell such a big difference with the herbs. It's amazing.
it's a great one. I
So,
love the Chinese.
yeah.
They are magic,
Oh,
really. They're
yeah.
powerful because they really plunge deep. Like I have a girlfriend that contacted me in the US, and she's had a lot of like post COVID symptoms, long COVID, but she's also had Epstein Barr, like a lot of this viral load, and just
Sure.
had migraines and really unwell. But she said to me, "Do you think you could help me with the Chinese herbs?" And I said, "Yes, of course I can." So same thing, got the tongue pics and we did a brief case history and I sent her the Chinese herbs. Well, I got a text message from her yesterday. She said to me, "I'm day 3 and all my symptoms are gone. This
Oh my
headache,
God.
yeah, the lassitude, 3 days only on the Chinese herbs." And it's her first time, clearly, of trying the Chinese herbs. So for her, it's quite miraculous. And she comes from an amazing family of practitioners. They're chiropractors, and her mum does a lot of energy testing and has all these incredible skills and tools. And she's been working with her mum, saying, she has to keep rescuing her. And this is like the first 3 days, she's not had to call mum and say, "Help me out of this ditch." So,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that's great feedback, Bonnie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was telling my husband because we both have had a lot of congestion this fall because we keep getting hot and cold, like going back and forth, I guess. And like you can hear it, you can hear it. It gets all congested and then it goes away.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I was like sick in like 4 years. So obviously I had a lot of stuff in there that
Yeah.
needed to come out. But
Absolutely. You can get really deep-seated. Yeah.
but I like it because I can tell it's doing different things with my hormones as well, which is really good.
Well, it's a balance. Yeah, because we were resolving the phlegm, but also working on your hormonal balance. So thank you for the feedback, Bonnie. It's great.
Sure. Absolutely. I'm grateful for you.
Oh, darling. Now I'm going to be doing these lives weekly.
Okay.
I'm just going to pick a topic. Like I've got like a wealth of topics, but if there's anything that you would like me to talk about, because I know that people have got an attention span for about 20 to 30 minutes. So I don't want you to be sitting there going, "I wish she'd end."
No, no.
So if there's any topics, please let me know. And that applies to you too, Beverly, if you want to turn on your camera. But anyone that's joining us has any topics that you would like me to talk about. I just thought timing was a really good thing for us to start with. So I might get started, because timing, I find, it's one of the key things, and really, it's one of the biggest obstacles because timing's everything. If you get the timing right, often, I have patients to come to see me and it's just a timing issue. And you actually have great timing because we've seen your BBT chart and it's, your charting is fantastic. But you can see why we use those tools because you can actually see it, can't you, Bonnie, on your chart? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's why I wanted to start with the real basics. And I know it seems so basic, but getting the timing right is everything. And so I'm going to break it down, whether you're doing natural conception or IVF, but it's just nice to know your body, really, when we're talking about timing.
Well,
So
you hear so many different things, so it's nice to hear what your thoughts are on it because you read
exactly,
a bunch of things that don't
yeah,
necessarily correlate with each other.
that's right. And I want to keep it really simple. Like that's part of it because it's a stressful process, and some of us have been trying to conceive for a long time. Like, how long have you been trying, Bonnie?
Um, since May of 19.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like a marathon, and we want to make it easy. I want to make it fun. I want you to understand your body.
mhm.
So the best time to conceive and to understand the fertile window, it's really knowing about ovulation. It's just it's the centerpiece, it's the peak. And if you can understand your ovulation, then it's very easy to then look at your physical signs, and then we can start to map it with the various tools that we'll go into. But if we just break it down, because not everyone has the same cycle. right? So we want to understand the different phases. And so I like to break it down, and it's very common to understand that we've got 4 phases that I work with. It's the menstrual phase, which begins on day 1 of your period. We've got the follicular phase where we're, maturing the follicles. And then we've got the ovulatory phase. Clearly that's the harvest and the increased libido and the peak. And that's where you've got, LH peaking, we've got estrogen peaking and testosterone peaking. And then the luteal phase, which is then dominated by progesterone. That's when it peaks and it's warm. So it's where the temperatures shift and we get that biphasic shift. That's where you see that on your chart. So if we can really understand what's happening in those 4 distinct areas, then you can start to metaphorically plan. Because if you look at the menstrual phase, like what's happening there? We've got low estrogen, we've got low progesterone, and the lining's being shed. So we've got bleeding. And a lot of that time is a sense of loss with most of my patients. And I don't know how you feel, Bonnie, but when you bleed, how do you feel?
It's frustrating, especially if we had a really good month.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't always get discouraged because I know you tell me as long as we have 2 days of bleeding, we can still conceive.
That's right. And it's celebrating the cycle. Like metaphorically, it's planting a new seed, but it's also a time to honor. Like it's almost like a little mini death. It's a time of rebirth, but it's also a time of inward reflection. Like, how can I optimize the next cycle? What can I improve? Whether it's working on the phlegm busting herbs, to maximize for this, the cycle that we're doing this time around. But it's literally planning, right? So that menstrual phase, there's not a lot of energy around that. It's almost like a dark moon, and then the new moon. And then the follicular phase, clearly estrogen's on the rise, the FSH is on the rise, helping the ovum mature. So we've got the high energy. So it's nice to look at, energetically, you can tell, all right, yeah, I must be in the follicular phase because I've got increased sexual desire. My libido's up, but I'm also really creative. This is the time where you're social, you want to create things in the home, because it's building to that peak of ovulation. So it's also looking at your energy levels. So if you're down in the dumps and bleeding, it's probably a time to say, okay, I'm going to, do some journaling. I'm going to do some meditation. I might go and do a yin class or a pranayama class or, something that's more quiet. But on the follicular phase, that's when, energetically, there's more energy, there's more abundance. All right. So this is the time where you can have increased levels of exercise. This is for my runners that they can go full throttle, like as we wax onto ovulation. But then as ovulation peaks in that ovulatory phase, that's this harvest. Then we tend to kind of pull back a little bit because it's the peak. And then we come back down the mountain, right? That's, it's that luteal phase. Clearly the progesterone might drop if fertilization hasn't happened. And so it can be a distillation phase, it can be a clarity phase, but it can also be a kind of surrender to the pregnancy, surrendering to what is. But it can also then be, if things haven't happened, you can get those feelings of frustration and annoyance, like hence the PMT and the build-up. So when we can see that we are in a cycle, like understanding our cycle, it's almost like a metaphor for life. We are bound by this cycle, this menstrual phase. It's a cycle of life. And when we understand it, then I really identify ovulation. And so we're going to look at 4 tools to identify ovulation. And the first method that I really instill, and you'll know this, Bonnie, is BBT charting. Yes.
Yeah.
Because that BBT, it's giving us such a clear indication of what the hormones are doing. You can see when estrogen peaks, just before ovulation. You can see it on the chart. You can see when progesterone rises and the temperature goes up. And then you can see the fluctuations in the length of the follicular and the length of the luteal, because people have different patterns, like some people might have a short follicular phase, meaning they don't have enough time to ripen the follicles. And so you need to understand that. And when you do the BBT charting, you can see, why is it short? If the temperature's too hot, maybe you're cooking your eggs. We have yin deficiency and inflammatory markers. So when we do the BBT charting, we can start to really observe ovulation, because you'll see when we ovulate, you get a temperature spike, right? You can see that on your chart, Bonnie, can't you? You get it's around 0.5 to 1 degrees Fahrenheit, or usually 0.2 to 0.6 degrees Celsius if you're working in degrees Celsius. But what we're wanting to see, and this is the crux, is we want to see that temperature spike, but then it's sustained for 3 consecutive days. That's the biggest crux. What happens is that, if it's fluctuating up and down, then it's like, okay, your body is attempting to ovulate, but we actually need it sustained for 3 consecutive days. And then those temperatures need to be above the follicular phase, an average of above the follicular phase. So, and then they're on the rise. They need to stay elevated, and then they remain up. Yeah. If they're dropping back down straight away, ovulation is wanting to happen. It's your body's attempting to ovulate, but we need it sustained for 3 consecutive days, and then the temperatures remain up. So I recommend Fertility Friend, partly because the chart is very clear. It gives you that 0.1 degree. It's very clear on the chart, and you see the spikes and the troughs and the slow rises and the fallback rises and all the different patterns that can happen in your chart. And with BBT charting, it's just important that you take your temperature at rest. It's important that you try and take your temperature at the same time every day. Clearly, things that may affect the BBT is when you do have a cough or a viral load or infection, fever, you've had a few wines the night before, those can affect the reading, you've had a bit of Zorba. But, the BBT charting I just find is the most accurate tool to confirm ovulation. So that's my number one. That's my number one tool that I recommend to identify ovulation. Number 2, we've got ovulation predictor kits. Now, I have a lot of patients come in and they're using the kits. Yeah, they will test the LH spike, but, some women may have like polycystic ovary syndrome, so you're getting multiple LH peaks, and, or you might find that, you're just not sure because you're getting those multiple readings or the lines are very similar, and you're not seeing that biphasic shift, which you get on the BBT charting. So they are great, and they're often really good to correlate onto your BBT chart. So I will often get my patients to have a line in their chart where they can go, here's my OPK positive here. And then we observe it and contrast it, and you'll find that they sync up. They often sync. So you've got urine-based LH test strips, which will give you the presence of the 2 lines. That's suggesting that ovulation will typically occur. You've got your digital ovulation tests. You've got saliva phoning tests, with the saliva tends to form a distinct phoning pattern when dried and observed under a microscope. I think they're kind of phasing out, but they do exist. But you've got the monitors, Mira, Anito. I do like the Daisy, because it's actually a fertility monitor, but it has the BBT thermometer with advanced features. You've got the Ava bracelet. It also measures things like skin temperature, resting pulse rate, breathing rate, overnight. OvuSense. It's good if you're particularly useful with irregular cycles. We've got Temp Drop. I do like Temp Drop because this is a wearable sensor that that also tracks the BBT. And this is good if you are waking up during the night. If you've got sleep disturbances, there are a plethora. I've just mentioned the main ones. But they are good to compare and contrast with the BBT charting. The third thing that I like to use and utilize is using the cervical mucus changes, because at the time of ovulation, your cervical mucus becomes wetter, it becomes clearer and more viscous. They're the initial signs to be aware of. And then as you get closer to ovulation, as your estrogen increases, the mucus gets thinner and it resembles, the egg whites, the raw egg whites. So it's really easy to check your cervical mucus. And I think so many women, we're so afraid of our own bodies, which is sad, because we should be taught this when we first go to school. We should know our bodies inside out. So then we can prepare for pregnancy or avoid pregnancy by understanding these signs. And, you have to remember that women will always have vaginal discharge, right? They will always have it. And part of it, when you understand what you're looking for, it's really easy to observe it even on your underpants. Like, I will often get my patients to wear dark underwear because you can see it's almost like a snail trail on the underpants. It looks like a little golden snail trail. It's just, wow, this is easy to see on your underpants. However, and this is when some women feel a little bit uncomfortable touching their own bodies. I will say that after you finish your period, wear dark underwear leading up to ovulation. A little hack. But then it's like after the shower, when your hands are clean, or you've washed your hands, you can actually just insert your fingers. We're not looking for the walls. We're looking just for the mucus at the entrance of the vagina. And you can just wipe it on the toilet paper. It's really easy to identify. And it's like cracking an egg. You can see when it's gelatinous. The other signs that I tell my patients to look for is that it feels a little bit like the end of your nose. It feels a little bit wet. It feels a bit wet, like we always feel a little bit wet at the end of the nose. A lot of women don't have a lot of mucus and they worry about it. So it's just looking for a sense of, if you're sitting down, you just might feel a little bit more slippery between the legs. It's like, oh, I feel a little bit slippery down there. You start to really tune in. It's almost like doing a little bit of a body check, be in the present. How is my body feeling? Do I feel wet down there? Does it feel like the end of my nose? Can I identify if it's looking creamy and pasty like it does after you ovulate? It becomes that kind of clag, thick paste, creamy. You can see the changes, the clear, distinct changes when you know what you're looking for. And we all know what an egg white looks like because we've all cracked an egg at some point in our lives. I don't know anyone that hasn't. So when you know what you're looking for, it's really easy to identify. And the last tool is the cervix, the cervix height. Our cervical position it changes throughout our menstrual cycle. So through those 4 phases, it goes up and down, almost like a shark, So it's, basically when it's low and firm, I use the analogy of the tip of my nose. The cervix is it's closed and rigid, like the tip of your nose. So feel the tip of your nose. And it's roughly the diameter of the tip of your nose. That's what your cervix feels like. If you actually can touch your cervix, and I encourage you all to start to have a feel around your vagina and get to understand, what does my cervix feel like? Can I feel it when it's closed? Does it feel like the end of my nose? When it's open, we call this a softness of the cervix, or, another word, we call this cervical ripening, but it gets soft. And so instead of it being rigid like the tip of your nose, it becomes like you're pouting your lips. I'm giving a big kiss. And it's like, soft lips. It still feels different to the ridge of your nose. So we want to feel for those changes. And then that diameter of the cervix, that aperture. So I want you to think of a camera that opens like this. It opens. And why does it open? Because it's about letting the sperm come in and then find its way to fertilize the egg. So it's like a big incubator, and our bodies are so intelligent once we start to pay attention to them. So when the cervix is high, so if my ring is the opening of the vagina and my hand is your cervix, it's going to go up when you're about to ovulate. And after you've ovulated, it comes back down. And as you're menstruating, it's coming right down low. So it's going up. We're just roughly about an inch, a whole finger. All right. Maybe a little bit more than an inch. But we want to feel for that change that's happening. So when you're doing the analysis and you're tracking, because consistency is key to understanding your cervical position. It's about doing the same position every time. So if you're cocking a leg over the toilet seat or on the side of the bath, or you're in the squat position, whatever your position is, do the same position each time. And I usually get you to track it daily from the last day of your menstruation. So that when you finish your period, start to have a play and start to observe, is it sitting low? If it's rising up, then you know it's time for the penis to come in, right? It's playtime. This is your neon turning red and it's time for go. So it just requires, the cervical position requires practice. It requires consistency, but then it will also correlate with your cervical mucus. So this is also, if you're having a play with the cervix, then you can see what is my mucus showing me. So you can track both at the same time. So those 4 things are really simple tools to be able to go, all right, this is me harnessing all the tools I've got around ovulation to understand when is the best time to have sex. Now, when is the best time? So we need to highlight this because we've identified ovulation, but what happens is that sometimes I have couples, they keep going. They just keep going and they wear themselves out. So we need to remember that, let me put it this way. The egg is only viable for about 12 to 24 hours, which is a really short window if we're just looking at the egg. However, we've got the sperm and it's viable. It survives for about 5 days in the reproductive tract. So it can live in that female reproductive tract for up to 5 days. So we want to have banking sperm. We want to have it leading up to ovulation. So if you're doing your OPKs, right, your OPK, this is your spike, all right, that usually signals that you will ovulate within the next 12 to 48 hours. So you want to start having sex from there and the next 3 days afterwards. If you're doing your BBT charting, you're doing everything in reverse because you're always observing the cycle from the month before. So you want to start having sex 3 to 5 days before the day of ovulation, and then including the day of ovulation is the best day. The day of ovulation is the best day for conception. So finding that day is the best, but the 2 days leading up to and the day of ovulation are the best fertile days. They give you the best chances. I think that's pretty much covers it. Now, let's talk about frequency of intercourse, because this tends to be a real problem that I witness with couples, especially when you've been trying to conceive for, 2, 5 years, 10 years, it can get tiresome. Baby sex can get very tiresome. So the one thing that I've taught most of my patients is that men do not want to hear when you are ovulating. They just don't want to know. It shuts them down. It gives them performance anxiety. I mean, it's great to be able to know if you are doing IUIs and IVF and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But when you're trying to conceive naturally and you've got to turn it on, the last thing a man wants to know is you're in your fertile zone. We need to have sex. So I take the word ovulation out of the vocabulary and we turn on our tantra powers of prowess. And we utilize, the 5 languages of love. And I don't know if people don't know the 5 languages of love, it's a book written by Dr. Gary Chapman. He's got 5 love languages, and we all tend to relate to one of these 5 love languages. Words of affirmation, we've got physical touch, quality time, acts of service, and gift giving. So I love words of affirmation. I love physical touch. They're my love languages. So my husband knows that when he wants to turn up the heat with me, he can write me a beautiful poem or a love note, or he can massage my feet, or, you know, whatever that, like when he's actually turning on that love language for me, then we know we're going to have sex. So it's about really tuning in with each other to get that frequency of intercourse. And so the frequency is important, but it's the connecting that's also important. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Frequency is a big issue because we're not, with a lot of my patients, I'm just not seeing enough. I'm seeing partners that are, you know, we've got one shot at it, and once is not enough in that cycle. You know, I need you to be having sex, you know, every single day, especially in those 3 days before ovulation, daily if we can. But if you're doing it the 5 days leading up to, every second day, and then every single day in those 3 days before ovulation and on the day of ovulation, ideally, in an ideal world. But clearly, if performance is if you're exhausted, you know, it's about tuning in with each other. So I love to encourage women to change it up. Morning sex, you know, morning sex, get it done, you know, change it up. Do things that you wouldn't normally do. And, you know, get creative with it. Tune in with each other. Even, you know, that's why I've written the Tantra book, because it's about love and connection and intimacy and tuning in with each other, because this journey can be a marathon, but the frequency of intercourse is so important when it comes to timing and increasing the chances of conception. So I wanted to end with something fun. All right. So I wanted to end with some myths and some facts. All right. Because I think there's some common myths about conception timing, and I just want to provide the accurate information, have a bit of fun in the last 5 minutes, and then I'll open up some questions. So, myth number 1, conception can happen at any time of the month. Now we know from this live that that is false. Conception is only likely to occur during ovulation, yes, which is typically, you know, mid-cycle, but it's not just mid-cycle because everybody's cycle is different. So we need to understand what our cycle is doing, which is why the BBT charting shows us the map. And so, you know, when you understand what your cycle is doing, you can optimize when you're ovulating, and we can get that sperm banked in, and we can increase the chances of conception. Myth number 2, certain sexual positions increase the chance of conception. Fact is, there's no scientific evidence to support that certain sexual positions are more effective for conception. The most important factor is that sperm's deposited near the cervix. And so you know that if you are ovulating, the cervix is open and the penis is sliding in, of course it's going to get close to the cervix. Myth number 3, lying down after sex increases the chances of conception. Now, I encourage my patients to do this, partly because, and I'll go into this, when you elevate your feet above your heart, what that does is there's the upsuck theory. Now, it's not scientifically proven, but why not add more value? If there's some form of upsuck theory that can improve the chances of conception, wouldn't you do it? I know I would. And we're just talking 5 minutes with your feet elevated. We call this pose Viparita Karani in yoga, where your feet are vertical, your torso is your torso is here, your feet are elevated. But it's turning on the vagus nerve, it's activating that parasympathetic nervous system. So it means we go from fight and flight, which most of us are in fight and flight response. It's turning on that parasympathetic nervous system when our feet are above our heart. And that's the space I want you in. That's the space for conception. That's the ideal safety place to be in. And we need safety first for conception. So that just means that the swimmers can do their thing. You're at peace. Everything's in harmony. It means that the blood's pooling in the pelvic cavity. So we're getting that increased blood flow to the pelvis and the reproductive organs and the uterus and the pallus. And the heart is relaxed. So even though it's a myth, I think it increases the chances of conception, even though it's not scientifically proven. Okay, number 5, myth, you can't get pregnant during your period. Now, I've had quite a few patients get pregnant on, during their period, partly because of that waiting sperm. And remember, if you've got a shorter follicular phase and you ovulate early in your cycle, then that sperm can be in that reproductive tract for several days. And if ovulation occurs just soon after your period ends, yeah, it can happen. And I've seen it happen many times. So you can get pregnant just after your period or during your period. Myth number 6, frequent ejaculation reduces sperm quality. Fact, frequent ejaculation does not significantly reduce sperm quality or count. In fact, regular ejaculation can help maintain healthy sperm. So I get my patients to clear the jets, masturbation, and, don't be afraid of that. And I think women need to be aware. Don't be afraid of your husband masturbating. It's important because we need to be able to self-pleasure ourselves. Even when we have deposited the sperm in the vagina, I will often get women to self-pleasure themselves while they're in Viparita Karani, because orgasms are going to increase that pleasure state. So, regular ejaculation can help maintain healthy sperm and also can help with conception. Last myth, stress has no impact on conception. You'll often hear IVF doctors saying that is a myth. Look, my opinion, this is just my opinion, that, it affects the cortisol in the body. It affects your hormones. If you have stress that is affecting your hormones and your cortisol levels, then clearly that's going to impact ovulation. So you see, it's a bit of a domino effect. Indirectly, yes, I think it does. But science says otherwise. So that pretty much covers timing. I wanted to make it simple. So ovulation is the best time. So we need to calculate, when you're ovulating, remember that everyone ovulates at a different time. It's not just what your app is saying on day 14, because we are not computers. We are human beings. We have feelings too. We need to understand what your cycle is showing you. And that's why the BBT charting is my number one tool to help us understand what's happening in the follicular phase and the luteal phase and all the fluctuations that go with those phases. And so I can see that distinctly on your chart. And that's why I love teaching people about BBT charting, so they can learn to understand what the chart means and what the fluctuations means. So understanding ovulation is the key, not mentioning ovulation to your partner, so it takes that pressure off him, turning on the love languages, tuning in with each other with love and intimacy and being present. But just looking at your own bodily changes, your cervical mucus changes and your cervical position is going to help you optimize for each cycle. So let me ask you all if you want to unmute and ask a question, or you want to put anything in the chat. Do you have a question?
As far as cervical mucus is concerned, how long do you track that? Do you track it throughout your entire cycle, or just up until ovulation, into ovulation?
Yeah. I usually get my patients to track from menstruation leading up to ovulation.
Okay.
After ovulation, it's pretty much, it's that opaque, claggy paste. So, you can track it all the way through if you want to, if you're just getting to know your cycle and see the different changes that happen. Because, some women have no idea because they've never really tracked it before. So in the beginning, it's nice to go, all right, what does it look like in the menstrual phase? What's happening in the follicular? Wow, when I actually do insert my finger and can see it, in the ovulatory phase, this is the egg white, it is that wet nose feeling. And then the paste at the end, that pasty, opaque, claggy looking discharge at the end, it's, you can track it all the way through. But usually once you start to know, I usually just wax on from the last day you finish your period leading up to ovulation is the best. Okay. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, I'm just looking at the chat. What if you don't ovulate every month? How do you ovulate every month? How do you improve? I guess that's saying, how do I improve ovulation every month? The medicine he's currently on. Okay. All right. If you don't ovulate every month, then the ways that you can help improve is by, first of all, tracking, because I actually get all my patients to track even if they do have irregular cycles. So to improve ovulation, I'd be looking at lifestyle factors. Then there can be things that you've got like PCOS. So we look at androgens and things that you can do to improve that. It's, supplements, stress management, having a nutritious diet, whole foods. I think sleep is probably one of the number one things I really get people to optimize when they've got irregular cycles, because when you're not ovulating, your body is in a stress state. So I like to fix the pillars first. So I fix it with nutrition, with sleep, with supplements, adding in things like acupuncture or any form of energy medicine that can balance your hormones. I find that acupuncture is incredible for ovulatory disorders. So give acupuncture a go. If you've got high androgens and PCOS, you can try inositol and berberine and NAC. They're just some supplements that I will often throw at it. Myo-inositol. We've got Vitex is another ovulatory herb. And then you've got medication. So, it's sometimes you might want to optimize working with East and West, So there are a lot of different strategies, and I'm not opposed to working East versus West, that we can work together. So you might find that the medication, after you address some of these lifestyle factors, can help improve that.
I have another question also.
Who's speaking? Sorry.
Beverly.
Beverly. Hello, Beverly. Hi, Beverly. Go ahead.
Hi, how are you? So, me and my husband both have gotten tested to see where the infertility lies.
Yes.
And my tests came back normal. His test came back with the low velocity and appearance of his sperm. And we had came up, after me doing so much research, I found out one of his medicines, his blood pressure medicine, was keeping us infertility. So the doctor changed it to a fertility friendly, blood pressure medication.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, how long will it take for his sperm to refix itself? And also, like, this month too, I'm 9 days late.
Mm-hmm.
But I've taken the test and it's not pregnant. I've also done the blood test with that, and they said that my progesterone is 2.81. So I'm not sure. I know, like, I was doing like also the ovulation kits. I think it was Clear Blue Digital Advance. It would tell me some months, most months I'm ovulating, but there are some months I don't ovulate.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's unpack this step by step. First of all, with the sperm, it's going to take 74 days of you being on a new protocol. It takes 74 days for the sperm to be created. So I would be giving it at least 3 months. All right. Give it 3 months. And then, add in, lifestyle factors. I find men, if you clean up their diet and, give him an anti-inflammatory diet, a probiotic, some vitamin D, men recover quickly, with lifestyle factors. Often with men, there's a lot of overheating of the testicles. So we want to cool those testicles down so that they can produce healthy sperm. So you can actually do testicular temp readings to make sure that his testicles are 4 degrees cooler. You can do some cool packs on his lap. Make sure he's got mobiles.
I was going to say, does that mean I have to sleep in the cold room like he likes air conditioning room?
No, we want to keep you warm and him cool. So, I find diet is the best way to address inflammation. So I'd be looking at that. But roughly about 74 to 90 days for him. When you've got a negative pregnancy.
Okay. I think when my thing is that I'm 44 years old now. So I was like, I have like the pressure of, okay, you're not going to have long. I need to get that out of my head and then I can function more better. But
Yeah.
I've been changing his diet. I give him like fruit smoothies with vitamin D, different types like that, and also changing his diet
Mhm.
to help him along. But
Mhm.
as I'm helping him along, I feel like
Not about
I'm
you.
going to be set back because of my age.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Age is a state of mind. So just you need to put that out of your mind. You need to go, it's how you feel. Like, I need you to get back into
Okay.
how you're feeling in the moment. And if you're like, remember how I've talked about the cycle? If you are,
Mhm.
at the moment, you're in the luteal phase, you haven't got your period yet, right? You're at the end. So, progesterone is low because you're at the end and you haven't got your period yet. So we're almost ready for the cycle to start again. Now, if you haven't got a pregnancy test and your period
Okay.
doesn't come on, I would suggest that you start doing some castor oil packs, right? To just give it a little nudge, right? We don't tend to
Okay.
use the
With
castor.
the castor oil packs, do you just get those from the local store?
Yeah, you can make the castor oil packs yourself. I love Queen of Thrones. If you look at the Queen of Thrones website, queenofthrones.com, they've got amazing packs. They're pretty costly, but if you get a bottle of castor oil from your local pharmacy, you can make your own castor oil packs. It's literally using a flannel or an old rag and literally covering it with castor oil, putting it on your belly. Like I usually, will get a piece of rag about this length and then about 3 or 4 tablespoons of castor oil. So it's kind of wet through, but not dripping. Put it on the skin below the belly. All right, below the belly, and then cover it with, a freezer bag or, a wrap. You've got some safety wraps that you can use, and then a hot water bottle over the top. Now, we don't normally use them in the luteal phase, but when you know that you're not pregnant and your period is imminent, then you can use that to get it going, right? So sometimes things just get a little stuck.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Then when you start to bleed and you
Yeah, this is my first month where it's like 9 days. Tomorrow will be 10 days. And I'm like, okay, where are we going here? Like, do I need to do further testing? But I just feel like this is just a fluke of this one time thing.
sometimes it can be just the stress. Like we had a big new moon, a big Scorpio new moon. Energetically, all my patients were wiped out. Like the shit is at the fan. Everyone's emotional and stressed. It's the biggest moon of the year, this new moon. So I would just go, all right, we're aligning with the moon. This is a new cycle. And I would like you to do some of that inward reflection, rest your energy. I'd like you to do Viparita Karani legs up the wall to give yourself a bit more energy. And
Mhm.
even try, doing some lower belly breathing. So we really activate that vagus nerve. And, once we just tell your body it's safe to bleed, it's safe to start again, and we just start to optimize the cycle again. This time we're going to focus on you. Beverly, we're going to focus on you.
Yeah, I have another question. How do you increase your cervical mucus? I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm getting more drier.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things. I love evening primrose oil, increasing your omega-3 fatty acids, increasing your, fatty fish, your hydrating fruits. Yeah, there's plenty of things that you can do to increase that. But yeah, evening primrose oil, if you wanted to take a supplement, you can do that.
And you said Vitex would be a good way to try to ensure you're ovulating every month.
It's an ovulation stimulating herb, yeah. And try it at the low dose end, and we usually start it in the follicular phase. All right, so after you finish menstruating, up to ovulation, then we stop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Beverly.
I appreciate that. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. What are some? Yeah, okay, Marilena, go for it.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Tassoni. Thank you for your live this evening. Really appreciate it. Just to piggyback on that question on the castor oil packs. If one does ovulate monthly, when is the best time to do the castor oil pack? And should it be done every month?
Yeah, it should. So if you're not ovulating at all, like if you haven't had a cycle for 3 months, then you want to do it. You could do it any day, every day. until you actually get that ovulation, until you can start getting some data and some tracking points. So you can do it every second day. My quick fix, because I know we're all busy, is abdominal gua sha in the shower, right? So if you have got those irregular, so rubbing the belly with the castor oil, and then you use like those Chinese soup spoons or the gua sha tool, those lovely scraping tools. But you can use anything with a serrated edge. I mean, I get dessert spoons and soup spoons, but you scraping the belly. So we scrape up the belly and we scrape to the sides, and it's literally making the belly red. But leave the castor oil with the soup spoon in the shower, and you can do that daily in your shower routine. So
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
But ideally, if you are cycling, then what we would normally do, we would cycle the castor oil daily from the last day of your period until ovulation, and then we stop. Reason being, it increases bleeding, so that's why we don't tend to do it when you're menstruating, because if you're a heavy bleeder, it will make you flood. However, if you have really, really light periods and they're painful, you can actually do castor oil when they're light. So it's a case-by-case thing, but the general consensus is that, we just do them in the follicular phase from menstruation, last day of menstruation until ovulation.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then another question I had is just about uterine polyps.
Yeah.
I have been diagnosed with one that is less than 1 centimeter, and my gynecologist has told me that should not be interfering with implantation or pregnancy.
Yeah.
And it's not an issue. But then I've heard some naturopathic doctors and traditional Chinese medicine doctors have said the opposite, that actually can affect the chemical structure of the lining and can affect pregnancy and implantation. So I'm kind of torn whether I should have it removed or not.
Yeah.
Especially due to the size that the medical doctors, the Western medical doctors, are telling me, no, don't worry about it. It shouldn't interfere. Just keep trying. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on that.
My advice is that anything under 3 centimeters is nothing to worry about, right? I would be then looking at like an estrogen dominance guide, so you could then start to go, all right, well, we can reduce that, right, just by looking at your diet. And, often when you are getting those buildups, those fibroids and cysts and things, it's estrogen dominance. So we want to look at your detoxification pathways of estrogen. So I'd be looking at doing the castor oil packs over the liver on the right side, as well as down here. But I'd be then looking at, things that are going to help the liver function better, because you want to work on getting those dirty estrogens out, because every month we need to cycle the estrogen out of our body. And that's why you get building those little polyps, is because it's recycling back in the body. So magnesium is great because it's like helps you excrete it through your poop. So magnesium is great. All like supplements like DIM and, things that are going to help with the liver function better, like psyllium husk and chia seeds, and things that are really going to help with the fiber and clearance. I'd be looking at downloading an estrogen dominance protocol and not worrying about it at this stage.
Okay, thank you so much. That's very helpful. And last question, I actually wrote it up in the chat as well. I just find that a big mood killer, especially during that fertile time of the month, during the fertile window. My husband and I both have really stressful jobs, and I find that work life responsibilities, plus I'm a caregiver to my mother who's been ill. I'm her only surviving family member, and so there's just so much going on, and just the stress of life, and also the general mundane. I find that gets in the way. I'm wondering if you have any suggestions on how to overcome that to help facilitate, intercourse and for fertility and pregnancy, successful pregnancy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think being present with one another. I love some of the tools in the Tantra book that if you haven't downloaded it, I can drop that to you. But it's literally even soul gazing, physical touch, holding hands, where you just like sex is something that evolves. Like when we give ourselves time, I think the best medicine that you can give each other is time, just to have a moment to go, all right, let's just jump in the bath together, or I'm just going to sit on the couch and let's turn everything off and I'm just going to look into your eyes. Like how long has it been since I've actually just laid on your chest and just felt your heartbeat, or get him to lay on your chest? Like really tune in with each other. What does each other need? Like, I just need you to be healthy. Like sometimes when you're exhausted and you're in a state of overwhelm, when your husband can just hold you, when you feel safe, you start to get aroused, especially if you're, the libido starts to it starts going, it starts to fire and wire, because it's like it starts from the intimacy and the love first. So the things where you feel safe and you feel supported. So if it's holding his hand, being in his arms, running a bath together, get him to cook your favorite meal, or tell him about the 5 languages of love, and you want to focus on that with each other rather than it's my fertile zone and I need to, we need to turn up the heat. That is the last thing we want to say to our partners. Like, imagine if your husband came over and goes, babe, we got to turn on the heat. I need to do it now or never. It's just not how you function. Imagine that. So we need to really be more sensitive. We're incredibly sensitive as human beings. So I want us to be sensitive with each other. Choose our loving words. Choose our sexy underpants. It could be, all right, oh, she's got the sexy underpants on. Like things that make you feel good, because it's about how you feel on the inside. Yeah, so you might want to have a bath or get home earlier and have some self-care before him. When was the last time you self-pleasured yourself without him? Because it's nice to just have a moment with ourselves in the bath on our own with a candle. Like sometimes it can be just something like that. Like when have we just given ourselves that space? It could be even a minute of silence, or just a minute to just put an eye bag over our eyes, like a beautiful shavasana, or like I said, Viparita Karani, legs up the wall. Sometimes we just need to give ourselves that 5 minutes of inward reflection.
Oh, very helpful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, darling. All right. I think that's about it. Yes, I think that's pretty much. Okay, one last question. How to improve the luteal phase of the cycles? It's just 6 days long. Okay, so luteal phase, that's the progesterone phase. We call it the yang phase of your cycle. And if it's short, it means we need to warm you up from an energetic perspective. Like, I'm just talking very simply here. Like sometimes we just think I'm going to take progesterone and it's going to extend my luteal phase. And that's not the case. We need to improve your ovulation. So how do we improve your ovulation? Right? Because that's going to support the luteal phase. How do we improve that? Then we look at the pillars. The pillar of the cycle is really the follicular phase. So nutrition, I'd be looking at that. I'd be cutting out alcohol, tobacco. I'd be looking at stress management. So doing things that make you feel stress-free. It could be joining a yin yoga class, time on feet walking, more hydration, acupuncture, castor oil packs in the follicular phase, because we really want to, when you have a strong ovulation, then that's what creates the progesterone in the luteal phase. Things like foot soaks, magnesium baths, because we want to warm you up. All right. So warm feet, warm foods. We look at sometimes looking at a gut healing protocol, because it often what you're digesting, you might not be getting the right nutrition. So if you're having a lot of cold and raw, I'd be changing it up for soups, stews, cooked foods, warm foods, things with cinnamon and ginger. And so we want to warm you up to improve the heat. We will need to turn down the heat for you to improve the luteal phase, because it's the yang phase. Remember, it needs to warm up. So there could be internal cold. There can be things like Raynaud's syndrome. There can be anemia. So I'd be doing a blood panel. I'd be looking at your thyroid. I'd be looking at blood markers. I'd be doing an iron test with ferritin stores and a full blood examination, just off the cuff. That's how I'd optimize it. All right, guys.
I have one question for you, Dr. Tess.
Okay.
What if you because I had a ectopic pregnancy that ruptured, so I lost my right tube.
Okay.
Would it be more difficult trying to conceive anyways, or do I just have an equal shot like everyone else?
You still have a chance. It just means it's just going to maybe take a little longer. You can still optimize it. So I'd be making sure that you want to keep that tube that is open, viable and clear. So doing the castor oil packs in the follicular phase is really going to keep everything open and clear.
And
But
that's from the last day of the bleeding and up until ovulation.
that's correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run these every week. I'm just going to keep it short and sharp because I want to make it fun. I want to make it energetic. I want to make it simple. I want to make it like, like I'm this burst of sunshine that can come into your life and go, hey, we're having fun here. This is not a marathon. So if you've got any ideas for topics, things you want me to talk about, you can drop them in the chat, or you can, leave them in the Facebook group or the school group so that I've got them. And I will see you this time again next week. So I'm going to love and leave you all. And I'll see you then. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank